This episode is brought to you by Alumni Q. For over 20 years, Alumni Q has been partnering with higher education institutions to build real, lasting connections that drive engagement, whether through events, volunteer management, or personalized fundraising strategies. Their software is designed to meet busy, accomplished alumni where they are, making it easier to connect, communicate, and involve them in meaningful ways. From personalized event experiences to targeted communications, Alumni Q ensures your constituents feel seen and valued. With 96% of clients staying with them long-term, Alumni Q's active support and responsive development make sure you always have the tools you need when you need them. If you're looking for a trusted partner that truly understands higher education and is committed to helping your institution succeed, consider Alumni Q, powering the connections that last. Visit alumniq.com to learn more. Hey everyone, welcome and thank you for listening to those around the globe. We appreciate you joining us for Alumless World, the 7th of February, 2025. Today's show, the Advocacy for Advancement edition, is our second ever episode, and we're grateful for all the positive feedback we've received so far. On Alumless World, we talk about constituent engagement strategies in education advancement from a global perspective. We try to take a broader view of advancement and how colleges, universities, international schools, and independent schools are working to build a culture of engagement and philanthropy. I'm here with my colleague, friend, Nicole Kempton. Hey, Nicole, what's going on?
Hey, Ryan. Well, it's a rare sunny day here in London, so I am enjoying it very much. Fully blue sky, birds chirping. You can almost feel January receding into the distance. So I'm very,
oh God, that's a great feeling. January receding into the distance, you know?
Yeah. It feels like it's like 600 days long, right?
It does. It's the longest month of the year for sure. And actually, we're just talking to our special guest today, Mandy McFarland, who's on the other side of the world and has the opposite weather right now, right? Which is sort of the depths of the summer in Perth, Australia. I'm excited to bring out Mandy McFarland, who is the CEO of Educate Plus in just a moment. But Nicole and I are both consultants at Chris Marshall Advancement Consulting, called CMAC for short. We've done projects with over 200 colleges, universities, secondary schools, and nonprofit organizations with customized solutions for advancement strategies. So here on the show, we try to publish a new episode of Alumless World every other Friday, which is on the off week for our regular show, Alumless. And I guess Alumless World, Nicole, is now regular, right? We're going to do this thing for reals.
Yeah, I think we're in it to win it now.
So if you're familiar with the regular Alumless, as opposed to Alumless World, we record a bonus segment that's 30 minutes long that's available on the podcast edition of the show. So be sure to pick that up. It's available for subscribe now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and soon all across the podcast world. So if you're listening right now by podcast, we appreciate it. I will be adding this to both the Alumless feed and Alumless World feed. We're grateful for Steve Rittler and the team at Alumni Q for being our Alumless World presenting sponsor. So that's awesome. All right, Nicole, how about you introduce today's fabulous special guest?
Yes. Well, we're really thrilled to welcome our special guest today, Mandy McFarland. Mandy is the Chief Executive Officer at Educate Plus. And for those of you unfamiliar with Educate Plus, it's an organization that is dedicated to supporting a community of over 2,500 advancement professionals across Australasia, working in schools, universities, and residential colleges. And over the past few years, Mandy and her team have also worked to expand Educate Plus further into Asia. And she's just been a tremendously strong advocate for the advancement profession globally. And so we are really excited to welcome Mandy to the podcast. Welcome to Alumless World.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here. It's an honor. So thank you.
Well, we're grateful for your time, and the miracle of modern technology brings us together across just about as many time zones, I think, as one could probably attempt to have on a single a recording Zoom stream or StreamYard. Here we are. And so I guess I would also say to listeners who are listening to the video or watching the video live on YouTube or LinkedIn, that if there is any sort of glitches in the feed and the times, don't yell at us. Or I feel like the internet is straining at the moment to broadcast us, but we're so grateful you're here, Mandy. Your journey in educational advancement is inspiring, and I was hoping maybe you could share with listeners what first drew you to the field and the path that led you to Educate Plus.
Yeah, I'd love to. I've been a lifelong believer in the value and the power of education. And I guess I saw that growing up. I had a lot of educators in my family. The educators I had at school and university were sensational. And, I grew up in apartheid South Africa, and education was a key to a future. And I think that's always stuck with me. I qualified to be a teacher. In a very short period of time, I realized that was not going to be my path. And I left, and I got a great job as a public relations officer. And I mean, you guys are far too young to even remember that kind of title, but it was sort of a general title that got you into the vague world of advancement of what it was then. It was marketing specifically, but that was my intro into advancement. And I worked there for 12 years. And in that time, I just loved it. So it was a tertiary environment, and I did every aspect of advancement. I just wanted to learn. I wanted to do as much as I can, including managing a call center, which was a very interesting experience. I learned a lot from it, and it's not really traditionally advancement, but boy, did I learn a lot of life lessons in that role. And I just loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. And my family and I immigrated to Perth in 2002, and it was kind of a moment to redefine my career, I guess, and relook at it. And I actually got a fabulous job at an independent girls' school. It's one of the oldest schools in Perth, very traditional, very established and well-resourced, and all the good things. But they'd never run a philanthropy program. So they employed me to establish the first philanthropy program at the school. And the school was 130 years old, so it was quite incredible. They'd done fundraising, but not in a structured way. It was, cake sales and fairs and stuff like that kind of fundraising, but not a structured fundraising giving program. So I established that, and we had the most sensational time. It was a combination of brilliant leadership. There was a principal who was just so open to embracing philanthropy and everything that went with that. There were no obstacles, a great community, lovely team. So it was just such a joyous experience. We raised a lot of money. We did a lot of really good work. We interesting projects. And I loved it. And we worked, as I said, the principal and I worked together hand in hand, and she retired. And I thought, right, time for me to look at something different. So I kind of missed the tertiary sector, but not hugely, because schools are very immediate places. If you have an idea in the morning, you could be implementing it in the afternoon, which is quite different to the tertiary. So, and I love that. I love the speed at which things could happen. But anyway, I was approached by a residential college associated with the University of Western Australia called St. Catherine's. And it was a very innovative, different environment. And I thought, well, I'm ready for different. I'm ready for something else. And they didn't have they had little bits of advancement happening, but again, no structure, no program. So I came in and headed up the whole advancement sort of activity at the college. And boy, it was the best 7 years I've ever had. It was so blue sky. Nothing was out of the realms of possibility. Again, great leadership, great willingness to risk and do things differently. I absolutely loved it. And I ran projects like an innovation youth hub. We created that and started that, and it's still going today, and it's getting funding left, right, and centre, and it's just brilliant. We ran a huge Indigenous program it was the biggest Indigenous residential program in the country. So, raising huge amounts of money for scholarship and bespoke buildings for Indigenous needs. So just such interesting projects, and I loved it so much. It was so wonderful. And in all of that time, I had been a member of Educate Plus. So when I first immigrated, I realized I needed a professional network. I didn't have that. When you've worked in a place for a long time, you build that organically, and I didn't have that, and I needed it quickly. And I belonged to a similar organization in South Africa, and I knew the value of that. So joined Educate Plus. I'm also a really great believer in giving back to the industry, and so I volunteered. I got onto the local chapter committee quite quickly. I then served on the board and became chair of the board, and I was on the board for 10 years. And, I worked really, really well and hard and did lots of different roles for Educate Plus, but loved it all the time that I've been involved. And then, during COVID, being at a residential college was a very stressful environment to be in, and the impact on international students, or that COVID created, keeping 400 young people physically and mentally safe over such a long period of time was incredibly challenging, but great learnings, great experience in so many ways. And I stepped away from Educate Plus from a volunteer perspective just for a little while to focus on all of that. And then the CEO role came up, and I thought, wow, I've done sort of every other part of the chain, on the other side of the fence. It'd be really fascinating to be on the operational side of the fence. And I threw my hat in the ring, and I was just so fortunate to get the role. So I've spent my life in educational advancement. I've spent a large part of my working life involved with Educate Plus. I'm an advocate, huge advocate for advancement. They're my tribe. I love my job, and it's just such a privilege to be able to do this every day and see the impact that the work we do has on the wider world. I love it, just love it.
Well, Mandy, you're obviously a builder and an innovator. I mean, there's definitely a through line of from your whole entire career of trying new things. And one of the things that I know you talked about with us when we met a few weeks ago was growing your membership across Asia. And I just wonder if you can talk about how have you been working to expand Educate Plus's support for and engaging with schools and universities in Asia, and what kind of challenges have you been facing in that endeavor?
Yeah, it's been so exciting. I mean, it's very new for us. So, I'm only talking about sort of an 18-month exploratory experience, but such a lot of goodwill. We were noticing that we were getting members from Asia, and we weren't quite understanding how they were coming to us because there wasn't any on the ground activity. It wasn't word of mouth. It was very random in terms of the places they were coming from. So we kind of noticed that there was an interest and a demand, and we had embedded it in our strategic plan in terms of new expansion and new markets. And very fortuitously, one of our very experienced board members who had been based in Adelaide, relocated to Singapore, and he was working at the Tangland Trust School. And he's a networker and a builder. And so every person he spoke to in his network, he took Educate Plus along with him because he'd been a long-time volunteer and he understood the value of what Educate Plus can offer. So between the two of us, we started this sort of 18-month experience of just talking, listening, hearing what the challenges were. They were quite different to what we were experiencing in Australia and New Zealand. And it was being respectful of those differences and not assuming that as a membership organization, we could just swoop in and have all the solutions. We really wanted to be able to offer something that was relevant, it was real, it was meaningful, and it could help their individual environments. We assumed at the time that we would probably create Singapore as a central hub and slowly over the next 5 years expand into the rest of Asia. None of that happened. It just went all over, and we've got members all over the place now. So now we've got a very different model that we're kind of grappling with in terms of trying to replicate our on-the-ground peer-to-peer model that works so well in Australia and New Zealand. We chapter based, so there's a big local connection, and those local connections are the network that drive people every day and support them every day. But trying to create that when you're so dispersed is very different and very difficult. So we've offered a lot of support, online support, which we do anyway. We've visited in person a lot to just, as I said, be physically there and understand their challenges and their circumstances, visited a huge number of institutions, and there's some incredible institutions right across Asia, and partnered with people in Asia who could actually help us along this journey. So it's very new, so watch this space, but it's very much part of our strategic initiatives, and our membership has grown from literally one person at one school to 45 schools over the last 18 months. So we feel that there is definitely opportunity, and we're going to double down in the next 3 years in a big way with completely different strategies and plans that actually work for. So we're creating an advocacy group, an ambassador group, to tell us what they need and how they need it packaged, and take it from there. So very responsive to local need, I think, is the key there. It's been interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, just a quick follow-up, Mandy. You mentioned that you were thinking about sort of centralizing in Singapore. Why? Why did Singapore make the most sense for sort of thinking about centralization of your efforts in Asia?
Look, I think a lot of Asia sees Singapore as a central hub, and maybe it's because it's a financial hub, it's an economic hub. For us, it was a little bit just more practical that we had a network there. So my colleague Arbra, who works at Tanglan, was quickly creating a network. So we had a base there, and we had people we could talk to and visit and trust very early on in the piece. And so it just made sense. But then the same thing replicated in Hong Kong very quickly because there was one person there and they created a network. So so at the moment we've got members in Malaysia, Cambodia, India, Thailand, Hong Kong. It's slowly going into Greater China, but we're hesitant to go too fast. So we're just trying to hold it to hubs where there are lots of schools in one area, and in Singapore. So it's been a really interesting experience, and I think Singapore just seemed like the natural hub. But as I said, it hasn't quite turned out that way. And I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's good to diversify, and people in Singapore, they don't get together very often. It's been so interesting to have a look at how they communicate, how they build a community. They work in their silos and their schools, and there's so many international schools and the big universities, and they keep to themselves. Happy to share, always very happy to share, but to try and get everybody together is not that easy. So we've got lots to learn and to try and bring a different way of thinking to them as well, I guess, of like what works for us and could possibly work for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. Nicole, you've spent some time yourself in that part of the world, and your kids attended international school in Korea, and you served on the advisory council for a Yongsan International School, worked to design a new alumni program there. What did you notice about how the administration was thinking about it? And did you sort of notice the same thing that Mandy was noticing in terms of sort of, I guess, keeping to themselves?
Well, I think it's so interesting because this kind of cuts right to the heart of what we're talking about today, which is just the value that that engaging alumni brings both to the institution and to the alumni themselves. And the international school experience is a really niche one and a really interesting one. And what you define as alumni is going to be students and former students, but also very much like teachers and parents that are part of that community. And for transient kids like mine who are kind of in the school for 2 or 3 years, it's a really special time in their life, and it kind of stands in for their experience in that country. And my kids are always going to have a really special bond with their schools in Korea because it corresponded with a really impactful time in their life experience. And even for the kids who are there sort of longer term, many of them are sort of true third culture kids, or TCK in expat shorthand, and they
third
tend
culture
to
kids. TCK,
yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, it's really, third culture kids tend to gravitate towards one another, even if they're not from, even if they haven't had sort of the same experiences, they tend to understand each other. And so it's interesting, they tend to gather wherever they go. And I'll say a little bit about the second part of your question, which was how was YES specifically thinking about alumni engagement. And, YES is lucky in that they're funded through a government-backed foundation. And so they didn't, aside from tuition, they don't really have a need to fundraise. And in fact, they weren't allowed to fundraise. And so we asked the question, in a world without fundraising, what value do alumni bring, and what would an alumni engagement program look like? And we launched a design thinking exercise over a period of a couple of months to get to know the alumni, understand their lives and their needs. And then we started to zero in on the ways that alumni could both, add and derive value from their membership in the alumni community, regardless of where in the world they were currently living. And, I'll use one example, like the school was really interested in exposing the kids to career advising even in middle school. And so we were fortunate to have a number of parents in our community who were very senior in their companies, and we would typically leverage them for speakers. But it turns out that actually the younger alumni were very, very happy to help. And they're a bit closer in age to the students. They're more relevant. They're really the people that the students want to hear from, because they can give them actual advice on sort of what to do over the sort of 5 to 10 year horizon, versus like, how do I become the president of Sony Korea, right? And that's very far away, right? And so I would say that the context is going to be different for every school, and that's why it's important to really go deep on the constituent experience and then connect that to the school's priorities. And so I loved what Mandy said about not making assumptions about the community that you're trying to engage, and really allowing that community to tell you, what their lives are like, and then kind of using those insights to drive your strategy. So I loved what you said about that, Mandy.
That's great. We've seen the same thing as what you've just mentioned, Nicole. And I think, for alumni programs, it's so difficult because, in a traditional sense, you have those families with you for 5 to 10 years, and you build that relationship with the whole family, the parents and the children, and they know they're going to be with you for a period of time. Where in international schools, they're coming in with a mindset that they're only there for 2 years because the job's going to change and they're going to move to the next place. So that level of commitment is not the same as it is in a traditional setting. And yet the students connect so heavily. And what you're saying is absolutely right. They have reunions in New York 40 years later, and they come from everywhere, and they might only have been at the school for 2 years, but they're not necessarily giving back to the school, but they still relate to the school and connect to it. So it's really challenging, to try and build a program around that's sustainable and that keeps that communication level up is really difficult. So and as I said, different for different schools. And because you've got all the different, you've got the American international school, and you've got the British international school, and you've got the German international school, they all stick to their cultural backgrounds and heritages too. So that's where our main sort of schools stick to themselves. They're not talking to each other about best practice and what's working for you and what's working for you. They just like trying to work it all out themselves. So if we can offer a little bit of that kind of just brokering of best practice and communicate, this is working, why don't you try it? And that generosity that exists in our industry anyway. If that's all we do, then I think we've done a good job. So I totally agree with you, Nicole.
Yeah. So, and one of those things, those best practices, is kind of this advocacy around advancement, right? Like, just arguing for why, schools should invest in advancement. And I'd just like to hear your thoughts on, just how Educate Plus is addressing this advocacy issue, and what kind of successes have you seen in terms of demonstrating the value that advancement brings to institutional leaders in the region?
First and foremost, for me, advocacy is about collaboration. I think it's so much easier to have a respectful, trustful conversation if somebody knows you and they know where you're coming from and your values aligned, and you can have an honest, authentic conversation. So advocacy doesn't sit alongside what we do. It's sort of integrated into everything we do every day, And I say this to our members a lot. You have got your own voice to advocate for yourself and for your profession every day. Use it, I mean, I know in my role, I've got different platforms that I can use, and I speak to a lot of leaders, a lot of decision makers about the value of advancement to their institutions, the role of the people, and that high level of technical skill and professionalism those people have and bring to the institution. And most leaders of educational institutions have KPIs that are income related. So whether that's student enrollments, whether it's fundraising. So why wouldn't you, as a leader, make sure that those activities have got the best possible people with the best possible resources to do those jobs? Because if it's in your KPI as a leader, it's clearly very, very important. And then, you take it one step further and you say, all the advancement people are outward facing. Majority of them are outward facing. They are talking to your community every day. They're engaging with your community every day. Why wouldn't you harness what they know and learn on your strategic leadership teams? We find in Australia and New Zealand, there's really it's changing. It's definitely changing and improving. But a lot of advancement people are not the only academic people on the senior leadership teams. Now, that's different in universities. They're way ahead of us in terms of that kind of appreciation of skill and talent and decision making. So, when I do talk to leaders, those are the things that I highlight, like laud your advancement people publicly so that people know it's not a dark art. It's performed under the stairs.
Right.
It's something that is integrated into everything that you do. Give them the resources to do the job that they need to do. The more resources they have, the more output there'll be. And by resources, I mean people and budgets and training and professional development. And then open your networks as a leader and talk to other leaders about the value of advancement. Because if they are all talking to each other and going, you really need to be looking at this and investing in this, then you're going to get a sort of a groundswell that's happening horizontally and vertically. And so I spend a lot of time at conferences. I talk about things. I talk with groups of leaders. And I said, I really try and empower our members to be their own advocates. There's no voice as powerful as your own. And we do a lot of benchmark surveying around salaries and condition surveys. And we're seeing changes in recognition. We're seeing changes in salary levels and in senior leadership representation, which is really positive and so good. So advocacy is vital. You've got to do it every day. It's not just a separate activity. As I said, it's got to be practiced.
Yeah,
that's really great that you guys are benchmarking some of that data so that you can see the growth and change over time as well. So
it's been fascinating. We do that benchmark every 3 years, and it's been incredible to see the changes and the difference. And that's so heartening that it is being recognized. And as I said, it's not just in salaries; it's in value. And it's hard to quantify that sometimes, but I think the value is certainly there. And also looking at of the advancement functions, and by then I'm talking about enrollments, alumni, fundraising, marketing, leadership, people and culture. The alumni fundraising always used to be the top of the tree in terms of salary. Who earned the most was always the fundraisers, but the admissions people are jumping up because I think people are starting to realize without that. Those really top class admissions directors who are so good at what they do. It's core business. So it's been fascinating to watch the changes. So
there's been some interesting movement, I think, over the years around having sort of the head of advancement also oversee admissions, right? And effectively assume the role as a chief revenue officer, right, for the organization. Mandy, I want to just skip ahead a couple of questions, and because we're bumping up against our time for our broadcast on LinkedIn and YouTube, but of course, listeners should subscribe to the podcast so they can hear our bonus segment with Mandy, where we're going to tackle some more questions. But I just want to make sure that we ask you here in this portion of the show about what initiatives and events is Educate Plus planning and in its efforts to support members, and how do you emphasize sort of knowledge sharing across your membership group?
Oh, look, knowledge sharing is one of our primary benefits that we offer members and something that we put a lot of effort into. So we've got a very widely dispersed professional learning program during the course of the year. And it's made up of in-person events and online events and a lot of peer-to-peer learning. And we've got a very strong mentoring program that supports all of that as well. So if you are, we're very much into career journeys. So if you are new to the industry, there's a lot of support for you at your level, mid-career, advanced professionals, and as said, and then a lot of our advanced professionals give back to try and enrich the newcomers. We still find, though, because we are people, in-person learning is the most successful thing, and we have a biennial program around that. So 1 year we would do a massive international conference where we have 800 plus delegates, and it moves around the membership as to where it's in Brisbane in 2026 in September. And then in the alternate year, which is this year, we do local conferences. So we do 6 local conferences. It nearly kills us, but it's absolutely brilliant. And I spend the whole year just talking. I love it. It gives me so much joy because that's where you see members can come. It's a different price point. More people can get involved. And the programs are very, very, very specific to local environment. So, issues that are facing someone in Victoria would be different to someone in New Zealand. So, as I said, the programs are very, very bespoke. So we do a lot of, and I said, we do about 85 webinars a year, and they are across all the pillars and doing a lot of different things, trends, best practice, a lot of best practice, and a lot of how to do something really well. Plus, we do a lot of project-based stuff as well, where we celebrate our Excellence Awards, for example. So we do a webinar with all our winners of our Excellence Awards. So they do a whole hour's conversation on the project that won a particular award. It's all on our website. So I really encourage you to have a look at some fabulous projects there. So it's very varied, Ryan. It's not one size fits all, and we're trying to also, again, we have regional members who can't get into big city hubs, so we have to do virtual stuff, and we do. But the in-person stuff is still very, very well attended, and is just such a vibey, lovely way to learn, with your peers, and there's nothing better than that.
Mm-hmm.
I found out about you after attending the Auckland conference. I think it was 2018. Yeah, where your predecessor, Neil McQuannell, I believe is how to pronounce his last name, invited me to be an international speaker, and it was just a wonderful experience. And you all rolled out the red carpet for us speakers.
We do that. Yeah, it's great. No, they're fabulous. The conferences, they're so good.
They are. All right. Well, we're going to switch things over, and we're going to take a short break and continue our conversation with Mandy. But before we do, Nicole, who is on Alumless World next?
Well, we have a really interesting program coming up. We've got two advancement leaders, Loreen and Fatty, from the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland Medical School of Bahrain. So that's RCSI Medical School of Bahrain, and the school was actually started in 1784 in Ireland and opened in Bahrain in 2004, I believe. And so this is a really interesting environment in which to build an alumni program, and we're going to hear from them next time. So I hope you all can join us.
That's going to be a good one. I'm excited. I love these Alumless World interviews because they really add a great deal of knowledge and to my own understanding of the field. And every time we record one of these episodes, I feel like I'm getting smarter, which is good. I hope the listeners feel the same way. All right. Well, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to pick up the conversation with Mandy McFarland. She's the CEO of Educate Plus when we come back.